Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to show you how to make a 4-patch block, and I'm going to show you how to turn it into a Quilt As You Go block. And we're going to use a pre-cut. Called a charm pack, and they're 5-inch squares. And I only have one, so generally they come about 40 to 42 squares. So we'll probably make a little wall hanging out of this. And I did make one previously. Let me show you this one. This was a smaller charm pack. It only had about 26 squares in it, but I made a little wall hanging, and it was also related theme, and she is so cute. So, and let me show you the back. There's the back. I used the same sashing as I did the backing, so it looks like kind of like all one. And then there's the front. She's adorable. So we are going to do that today, and I'm going to show you how. And let's see what we need to get started. Okay, so first we have our charm pack, and this charm pack happens to be camping related theme because it is camping season for us. So I thought this would be really cute for a little wall hanging at my camper. And then I have my backing. I have some pins and some clips. I have my rotary cutter. I have my hero marker, which I used in my last video. I'm going to show you that again. And then I have a small pair of scissors in case I need to clip some threads. And I have a little iron because I love to iron. And then I have my machine. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is take a look at our charm squares. And I'm going to try to just go through them and see how I want to match these up into 4 squares. And if you look at my example here, 4 squares will equal 1 block. So we just want to match that up and see how we want to coordinate that. So I'm going to do that real quick and I'll be right back. Okay, so I played around with my fabric and I made all my block pairs, and looks like I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I probably can only use about 9 to keep it even. I'll do a 3 by 3. So now I'm going to show you how to get these sewed together. Okay, so we have our first block laid out, and we're going to sew our blocks together. So we're going to sew that one together, and then this one 1/4 inch straight down. Okay, so I'm going to go to the machine and do that. Making sure we have our blocks lined up, we are going to sew straight down 1/4 inch seam. All right, so now we want to sew these together. Okay, so I have that all ironed down. So I'm going to do that with all my other blocks, and then I will come back and show you how to put this all together. Okay, so now I have all my blocks sewn, and now we're going to put these into a Quilt As You Go block. So we sewed 4 together to make a 4-patch, and now we're going to make the Quilt As You Go block. So for that, we're going to need our backing and our batting. Oops, our batting and our backing. Don't know why I always get them confused. So what I did was, now this block, as you can see, is going to be a little shorter than my batting and my backing. But I did that because I gave myself some room for the end when we go to square it up. So we're going to do our backing, our batting, line that up, and then we're going to put our top. And how we're going to sew this is to make it all one. Center that as best I can. Is we're going to take our hero marker, and if you didn't see my last video, a hero marker has a pointy tip. It's not sharp or anything, but it's kind of pointy here. And when you rub it on your fabric, it makes a mark. So let me grab my ruler and I'll show you. And we're going to make an X. So we want to take the marker and make an indent this both ways. So hopefully I don't get my big head in the way. We're going to line this up. And we're going to take the marker. Now some people just go like that. But I like to really make sure that's in there. So I go back and forth a couple times. Just small little strokes. And I don't know if you could see that, but there's a mark that goes diagonal to where I put it in. So, and we'll do the other side. Now you could also use a marking pen, soluble marker, whichever you prefer. I like this because I don't have to worry about putting marks on my fabric. This, be honest, this has really been a game changer for me. Okay, and that mark will stay there until you sew it. And then what I found is as soon as I iron it, it's gone. So I'm going to take that to my machine and sew my X. And I'll be right back. So the block is sewn down. And as you can see, we sewed right where that mark was, intersecting right at the middle. And I'm going to do that for the rest of the 8 blocks, and then I'll be back and we'll trim these up and put them together. I have all my blocks sewn down and I have my sashing ready. So for the back sashing, I cut it at 2 1/4, and for the front sashing, I cut it at 2 1/4, and the back I cut it at 1 inch. So I'm going to show you how to put these together. So I'm just going to lay them out in an order that looks good. And we're going to do 3 across and 3 down. Okay, so some that looks like it goes. Okay. So let's see. All right, so that looks good to me. We have 1 left over because we had 10 blocks and we only needed 9. So let me see if I want to switch anything out here. Yeah, that looks pretty good. All right, we'll save this guy for later. Okay, so I'm going to get some of these out of the way. Put them over here. And let's put these together. All right, so I also trimmed these down to 9 1/2. Forgot to mention that, sorry. So let me grab my sashing. Now, to connect these, we're going to take our 1 inch sashing, right sides together, and we're going to put the 1 inch in the back. Line that up. Flip that over, and then the 2 1/4 I'm going to fold in half and iron. So we have this lined up. We're going to flip this to the front, and we're going to take our 2 1/4 that we ironed in half, and we're going to line that up, raw edges together. And I usually clip this, you know, so it doesn't move. And we want to sew a 1/4 inch straight down. So let me get that all clipped, and we'll take that to the sewing machine. Okay, so making sure that nothing moved, and you can fix it if you feel like it shifted a little, which mine did. Okay, so let's take that to the machine and sew that. And I left over some overhang here because this is the selvage edge and we don't need that. So let's sew. Okay, so now we can trim these bottom pieces off. And you don't have to be exact with this, because we're going to trim that up at the end. So let's put that aside, and then I'm going to actually iron this, because we want to now bring this back piece, fold that over, and I'm going to iron it to stay down, and then we're going to put these two together, and I'll show you that as soon as I get this ironed. So now we want to join these two. So we're going to take the back of our one and the back of our second one, and we're going to put these together. And you're going to join the top of the edges, the raw edges together, making sure your blocks are lined up. And you want to make sure they're lined up at the top and the bottom also. So now we're going to clip it again so it doesn't move. Okay, so there we go. We're going to sew this 1/4 inch all the way down. So we have that sewed down. This is what it looks like on the back. And now I want to iron this so it stays flat. I'm sorry, I am off camera ironing this, so I don't have a little mat to move over. All right, so now that's sewn down, and now we're going to do the front. So for this one, we're going to fold this over, and I'm going to iron that flat so it stays down. Okay, and this you can pin if you want to. I usually like to throw a couple pins in there so I know it's not gonna move on me, but you don't have to. You can just hold it down too. All right, let's go to the machine and sew that. And we're gonna sew, for this one, we're gonna sew about 1/8 of an inch. We don't really need to do 1/4 of an inch because you don't wanna go too far in or you'll have too much of a flap there. So about 1/8 of an inch. I usually just run this edge along the edge of my presser foot on the inside. And then that's about 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so we have that sewn down. There's the front, there's the back. And now you can trim these off. So I'm just going to get my ruler and square that up. Okay, so there we have our first block. Oops, was the right way. Okay, and then we're going to continue to join the rest of them. So again, we're going to right sides together, and if you're comfortable, you can go right to the edge. I'm just going to pin it as I go. Okay, and I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to cut that. Okay, and then we're going to put our front sashing on. So raw edge to raw edge, just lining it up. Okay, and then I'm just going to trim this off to make it easier. Okay, and then we're going to sew this. I've sewn each row together. So here's these three, and these three. And now we're going to join our rows. So we're going to do that the same exact way we did our blocks. We're going to take the 1-inch strip and we're going to lay this right side together with our row. I'm just going to grab that, flip it over. This is really hard to see the correct side. Okay, go to the right side. So I'm going to clip that all the way down. Okay, so we have that clipped on there. And then we're going to put our front piece on, which is the 2 1/4 strip sewn in half. Raw edge to raw edge. And we're going to put that on. You want to try to lay this flat so you know you're not, the fabric is not bunching anywhere. Okay, so we have that on there now. And I'm going to double check just to make sure it didn't move, which we got a pucker right there. So we'll fix that. And that looks good. So now we're going to take it to the machine and sew it 1/4 inch all the way down. I'm going to cut off these edges here so we don't have this bulk. Oh, and this got messed up. I'll fix that. Okay. Cut that. All right. I'm going to take the machine and sew 1/4 inch all the way down. Okay. So we have that sewn down now. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to bring this back forward. And we're going to line it up with our second row. And we're going to clip that. Making sure we're lined up. Easier to go this way. And you also want to make sure that you are lining it up with your seam here. So this should match, this should match this. And again, you want to line that up with your blocks over here on this edge too. And I'm going to put a clip there so that doesn't move. So we'll continue to line that up. Here we go. And that matches that. I'll put a pin there too, or a clip. Okay, so we're going to take that to the machine and sew it 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch all the way down. So we have that done, and now we can put our third row on. Let me just, I usually don't sew on this cutting mat, but there's enough here that it won't go through. Okay. So now we want to get this on. Let's see which direction. Okay. So now we want to match this. First I'm going to match my seams up. Okay. And then I'm going to match this one up. And then I'll pin the rest. Okay. So again, we also want to make sure that our blocks are straight on the ends. So I'm going to put a clip there to hold that. Hopefully you can see that. I don't know if the camera's catching that. And then our end piece. And again, making sure that that lines up. Okay, so I will now sew a 1/4 inch all the way down. We have that sewn down now. Oops, take our clips out here on the sides. Actually, it's this way. All right, and that's our 3rd row down. And now we're going to pull this apart a little bit and fold down our top. And I'm going to pin these so they stay, so the seams stay matching. So I will get that done and get that sewn down, and I'll be right back. So we have our 3 rows sewn, and now we have to attach the binding all the way around. So to do that, we're going to take our 2 1/4 inch strip, same as we used for here, and we're going to attach that around. But your strips are only, the length of fabric, so it's about 45 inches possibly. So we need to attach a couple strips together to make one long length. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So we're going to take one strip and we're going to put right side up, and then we're going to take our other strip and we're going to put right side down. So right sides together basically, and we're going to make a T. Okay, and then we're going to sew from outside corner to outside corner so that when we flip this, we'll have one continuous. So I'm going to pin that. So you can pin it like each side. And if you're uncomfortable about just sewing that without marking it, you could either mark it, or I'm just going to real quick show you. I'll use my hair marker and I'll just make a mark. And then I'll take that to machine and sew it down. And I'll be right back. So take the pins out, and then we want to cut off this excess. So we're just going to cut off a 1/4 inch from the sewing line. Okay, take that away. Now, when we flip this over, we have one continuous binding. And a lot of people will sew the seams open like this. You can just finger press that. And some just do it normally, like to one side. And there you go. And then you can just cut your little hairs off here. And now you have one continuous strip. So I'm going to make all that. I'm going to get that attached to the back when we do our binding. Well, when I do my binding. So you want to start pretty much in the middle of the, usually the longest side of your quilt. But since ours is square, we're just going to start it in right here. And you want to leave a nice long tail because we want to join this together when we come all the way around. So you're going to start with your raw edges together, and leaving our tail, and we're going to just pin as we go along. Now when we get to the corners, I already have this one done, but I will show you. I'll take this out. When you get to the corners, what you want to do is let me take these because it's pulling, so hold on one sec. Okay, grab my strip. Okay, so when you get to the corner, you want to flip up your binding. Hopefully you can see that. I'll turn it this way. You want to flip up your binding at a 45 degree so that this edge meets with this edge. Okay, so it looks like it's one continuous. Then you're going to take that, I'm going to hold it down, take this strip and come back at a 90 degree. Line up that edge with this edge and then go straight down and line that up. So now I'm going to hold this and I'm just going to clip it like that. And then I'm going to continue straight till we get to the next corner. So let me just do that real quick. And I'll show you again on the next edge. Or the next corner, sorry. Okay, so again, we want to, we're going to come down this way. We want to fold this up at a 45 degree so that this edge meets this edge. Okay, if that makes sense, it's 45. Then we're going to bring it down into a 90 degree and line that top up and line our edge up here. Okay, I'm just going to hold that. I'm going to pin it or clip it or whatever. And then I'm going to continue on. Okay, so I'm going to continue that until I get all the way around to the other side where we started. Okay, so we're going to sew the back and okay, so when we start sewing, we are going to sew. We're not going to sew where we have the loose fabric because we're going to join at that part. We're going to start sewing where we have our first clip. And we're going to sew a 1/4 inch all the way around. Show you how you do your corners here. What you want to do is take your pin out, unfold this a bit. We have to take another pin out. You want to sew to a 1/4 inch to the end. So you're going to now lay this flat and you're going to sew a 1/4 inch before the end. Okay. And then at that point, you could either just take it out or you could sew off. And what I do is sometimes to make it cleaner, I just go turn this at a 45 and sew off. Okay. Then what you want to do is roll it up like we did before, right on that 45. Bring it back down on your 90. And then you're going to sew this way. You don't want to sew this down. You just want to now turn your fabric and sew down the other side. So you're going down the next side. And you're just going to follow that all the way along. Until you get to the next corner and do the same thing. And I'll show you that when I get to that one. Coming to our next corner, I'm going to lay this out straight, sew to a 1/4 inch before you get to the end. And again, you could either stop there or turn it and sew off at a 45. I prefer that method. And I'm going to cut my thread. Turn my next side. Come up at our 45 that we had folded there. Back down at our 90. Line it up. And then you're going to sew from the end straight down. And then you're just going to continue that all the way around until you get to the end where you had your opening. Just don't sew anywhere near your open, just sew up to your opening, and that's it. Okay, so we now have our binding sewn down to the quilt, the back of the quilt, and we want to join these two ends. Okay, so what we want to do is you want to, first of all, make sure you have enough room to manipulate these when we're ready to sew them together. So if you don't, you can just take out a few stitches, which is what I did here because I didn't really give myself enough room. So you want to overlap the two strips, and you want to mark and measure the amount of the width of your binding. So our binding was 2 1/4. So we want to measure and mark 2 1/4 inches of overlap, which is where we're going to put it together. Now, unfortunately, I have a seam right here where I joined my binding. And since that rarely happens, I'm going to have to work with that. So I don't want to use this in my join to the next one. So I'm going to go to right at the end of this, and I'm going to try to join mine there. Doesn't give me much room, but we're going to work with that. So first I want to cut my bottom to meet up with that. So it's right about there. So I'm going to cut this bottom piece off. Get rid of that. And then from this bottom piece, I'm going to measure over 2 1/4. So let me get my ruler. Okay. And you want to see where you have that, cut right there. So I'm going to measure over 2 1/4. So that's 1, 2 1/4 is right there. So then I'm going to mark that. Just make sure I put my finger on that. Okay. And we want to cut that off. because this is where we're going to join the two together at that mark. So now we have our 2¼ inches. So the best way to do this that I found was to take this strip on this side, lay it flat, and then take this strip and right sides together. We're going to cross them just like we did when we joined them, the binding originally. Okay. And then you're going to sew from this corner to this corner. Okay. So you can mark that. I'm going to pin it for right now. Grab my pins. And also, I can take my ruler and my marker, my hair marker. Oops, let me just. Okay. And I'm going to mark that so I know exactly where to sew. Okay. So let me take that to the machine. I'm going to sew that and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have mine sewn down. I'm going to take the pins out. And before I cut that off from the stitch line, I want to make sure that this came out right, because sometimes, you know, things happen, and it does. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to take this, make sure you can see that, and I apologize if I don't always get it perfectly in camera. I'm kind of using the overhead. It's kind of new for me, so I either stick my head in the way all the time or I'm not in frame. So I want to line that up with my 1/4 inch mark, and I want to cut this off. Okay. And then that should lay down nicely. Of course, I want to open that seam up just like we did the other one. And I'm just going to finger press it because we're going to sew this down. So just finger press that open. Okay. Now we're going to take that back to the machine. And we're going to finish sewing from end to end here where we stopped on each side. Okay, so I'm going to take care of that and I'll be right back. All right, so we have that sewn down now. So our binding is completed. And now what we want to do is we want to take this binding and bring it to the front. Like this. Then we're going to clip that or pin that or however you want to do it. I'm going to clip that down. And then we're going to top stitch all the way around the whole quilt. So I'm going to take care of that and I'll show you when I'm completed. So she's all finished and I put the binding on and sewed it down. And then this is the front. She's cute. And then this is the back. And I did the same sashing as the backing. So it looks more like a one whole cloth than separate sashing and backing. And then the front again. So just to recap, we did a four patch block. We took 4 5-inch squares and sewed them together first. And then we put our batting and backing on and then sewed them in rows with our sashing and then sewed our rows together. Put our binding on and we're finished. So I hope you enjoyed this video and this tutorial. And if you want to see more, please subscribe and give it a thumbs up and then hit that notification button so it'll tell you every time I upload a video. So remember, happy sewing and sew something happy.